I love to do sessions up and early. You know what? Because you can beat the traffic. Right? So that's the best part. So today I'm going to give you a preview of what open source can do for you and what's in it for you and what you need to do as a community member for open source to sustain. So open source has been there at least for a couple of decades, right? So and over the years it has progressed, it has grown in strength. 2018 is a very special day for open source. How many of you heard about open source initiative, OSI? Not Open Source India, right? So it's the 20th anniversary. This year is actually the 20th anniversary of Open Source Initiative. Right? So it was started back in 1998 in the month of Feb. Even the label open source was coined in a round table on February 3rd, right, in 1998. And in the same month, the Open Source Initiative was founded as a non-profit organization. So the charter of OSI is, of course, to promote and protect open source development and communities. Lead open source definitions, meaning the taxonomy that we use in open source. For the licenses, for example, the licenses that we use in open source are approved by OSI. Right. So it's a special year. And personally for me, 2018 is a special year as well, because 10 years ago in 2008, that's when I started the first Eclipse open source development lab in India. Right. In fact, it was actually the first lab east of Europe, open source development lab. I still remember the time when I was actually scouting for developers who can contribute to open source. It's a different ball game. It's way different from contributing to your projects within the organization. There are various factors that matter, and I will touch upon some of them. So what drives open source? Right? So these are the key factors involved in an open source ecosystem. Right? Of course, we start with the developer. Right? The developer who contributes code, very important. Right? So, and then we have the community that contributes the collateral, right, that enriches the open source ecosystem. And of course, the big ones, the enterprise, right? The enterprise provides the support system. It's the backbone, right, of the open source ecosystem, right? Because enterprise provides membership fees that helps the foundation, provides leadership in projects, including contributing the initial set of code as well as set of developers to take the project forward. So, and then combine them, you kind of get a unique culture for a specific open source project. So the culture is special because that's what differentiates each project. Right? So I'll get into the governance and other aspects a little bit later, but at this time I want to make sure that you understand these three key factors influencing, and each role is extremely important in the success of open source. Right? And so now let's look at from the other side, right? Because open source is known for excellence. One of the reasons we all look at and pay attention to open source because there are a lot of cool things happening there, right? So it's a benchmark for excellence. And what drives excellence? So you need to have a purpose. So that every open source project has a very clear charter, a goal, right? So there is a purpose. And then there needs to be a way for you to acquire knowledge and share knowledge. So become a master, right? A lot of people are excited by that, right? So that's another factor. And then the other one is you want the freedom, you want the autonomy to do what you think is the right thing in that context. Right? So purpose, mastery, and autonomy. So these drive excellence, and you can actually see these in action within a open source community. Right? So there is only one kind of wealth in this world which keeps growing as you share, but diminishes if you keep it to yourself. That's knowledge. Right? So it said that knowledge is wealth. Right? So that's where the mastery part comes into play. So you have, in open source, you will find a purpose, you will find the ability to master the technology and being the master, right, that you want to be, and gives you the freedom. Of course, within the constraints. It's not just free for all. That doesn't make a good open source. So IBM, so by the way, I've been in IBM for a pretty long time, and one of the roles I do for IBM is to represent IBM on the Eclipse Foundation Board of Directors. Right? So IBM has been in open source for a very long time, starting with Linux in late 90s to all the way to CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation with Kubernetes, for example. Right? So that's the entire span of 2 decades for you. Right? So initially started, IBM set up the first Linux Technology Center in IBM in 1999, around that time frame. And shortly about a year later, IBM got together a set of companies. So at that time, I was not in IBM, I was in Rational Software, which IBM acquired in 2002. So IBM collected a few companies like Rational and started the Eclipse Consortium. Right? So I'll talk a little bit more about that down the line, because all of these things matter in the progress and in the transformation that's going on. Right? So that's the, and around 2012, that's again IBM pivoted around cloud computing. Right? So that's when there was OpenStack, Cloud Foundry, right? Docker, right? Node. A lot of these came together. And in some cases, IBM actually contributed them to open source, like Eclipse. In some cases, IBM was actually the driving factor, even though the project was already there. So these are the big ones where IBM has their open source projects, right? So where do you, I hope you recognize what these are, right? These are open source foundations. There is a Linux Foundation, there is a Eclipse Foundation, and there is a Apache Foundation. Of course, these are not the only ones, but these are just, I'm just calling out the key ones. And one of the things you would probably notice in here, you see a different logo for the Eclipse Foundation. When someone asks you what is Eclipse, I think the first thing that comes to your mind is the Eclipse IDE. Is it right? Yeah. So, but Eclipse Foundation is actually much, much more than that. So that's why last year, Eclipse Foundation went through a transformation, including rebranding itself. So this is the new brand icon for Eclipse Foundation. Each one is unique in their operating style. Linux Foundation is huge. So, and under the aegis of Linux Foundation, there are other foundations out there, right? So CNCF that I just talked about, and the next keynote is about CNCF. So that's one of them. There is another project on blockchain that I'm going to touch upon from IBM, Hyperledger. Right? There is a JavaScript Foundation. Right? So how do you decide which you want to contribute a project to a particular foundation? How do you decide? So there are various factors, and it all depends on certain unique characteristics, right, within that foundation. But the key driving factor many times is the adjacency, right? For example, you have been working with that foundation for some time, right? Or there is, and you partnered with another organization, and that organization has been working with this particular foundation, right? So that adjacency is another factor that we'll see is a key differentiator in terms of deciding which foundation the project will go under. So let's switch gears. So let's move away from open source to the world of enterprises and business models, right? Early this year, IBM got together, IBM and a partner got together interviewed more than 2,000 CEOs to understand what's keeping them awake at night, right? What are their focus areas, right? So you can see the trend over the years, right? Market factors was one of the leading ones in the past, but then again, a few years ago, it kind of dropped down because of the technology and the skills, etc. So now that's back in focus. So what it means is that the big enterprises have now shifted gears and they have started to disrupt the market rather than be the disrupted, right? So you all know about the stories of small companies coming on board and disrupting big enterprises, right? But now the tables have turned, right? So, and the other things that they are focusing on are, of course, technology, and with technology comes skills, right? So you have to acquire new skills every 6 months, for example, right? Because it keeps changing. Even if you want to stay still, the things around you keep changing, so you have to adapt to that, right? So that part is always there. So technology factors, right, and skills, that's always there as a top focus, right? So what's the current threat? The current threat, what they're worried about is, right, someone bringing a compelling user experience and disrupting the market. It's all about the value proposition, right? It can be new players or it can be existing players, but it's all about the market differentiators, right? So that is what all of them are focused on, and that is what the biggest threat to their business model, right? So as you can see, about three-fourths of them are really worried about the threat to their business model, but there is another small fraction which is not, who are not that worried. But that is a point in time statement. Today they may be fine, but tomorrow they may be under threat. So that's where it's about the power in partnership, right? So it's stronger together. So you would have heard about this a lot, and one of the phrases I will keep mentioning over and over is the whole is actually much more than the sum of the parts, right? That's what the power of partnership is. So, and there is also another factor that's playing in here. As the technology is changing fast, it is nearly impossible for any organization to go by themselves. They have to engage in partnerships. They have to engage in partnerships with their competitors sometimes. So another place they look towards partnership is in the community, right? So that is where open source is coming into play. So for example, how do you create compelling value proposition for your clients, right? So in order to know that, in order to even figure out what you need to do, you need to actually run some analytics, right? So you have the power, but sometimes you don't realize it. And I mentioned that recently enterprises have started disrupting, right, rather than being the disrupted. And why is that? That's because they have years of data with them, right? And the only thing that was required is to gather some insight from the data, and they have it right there in front of their eyes what they need to do. So they have more data than anyone else, relevant data that they can use to improve the experience of their clients. So sometimes it will require them to adopt a new technology, right? It could be as simple as a AI-based chatbot, or it could be and a very smart monitoring system, right, that can actually get insights into what is that you need to do to improve the experience for your clients. So it requires a digital transformation. It requires you to adopt new technologies, right? And of course, you need to be agile. You need to be able to fail fast, right? So don't stick to it. I mean, if you think it's not giving you the right results, leave it and start over, right? So don't spend months on that. You don't have time. So the other point is top enterprises are now giving a lot of flexibility to their developers, right? So they are creating a culture giving autonomy to developers to innovate and to explore and experiment. So all of these are essential, and that is where a community, an open source community, is coming into play, right? Now let's look at, this is one of the slides where I'm going to spend some time on, because this is extremely important. These are actually the traits of open source projects or open source foundations, as you may call it, right? And the first one and the last one are extremely important for enterprises, for enterprises to participate in open source project. Responsible license. So okay, let's step back, right? So why are you interested in open source? It could probably start out as the cost factor, of course, right? It's free, so that's of course an interesting one, and it has actually integrations to something that you really need. So integration part, and you can reuse it, right? So these are the easy ones, but there are some complicated ones as well. Licensing is actually one of them, right? So responsible licensing. Licensing also has another aspect to it, which is the IP part. IP cleanliness. By IP I mean intellectual property. IP cleanliness and pedigree of the code is something that's extremely important, because you don't want to get yourself caught in legal issues down the line. So responsible licensing assures you that. So there are various open source licenses out there, right? So they allow you to use the code, they allow you to distribute the code, and they also allow you to even make changes to the code. And some open source licenses, for example, the Eclipse EPL, Eclipse public license, will actually require you to contribute the changes back to the public community. That is actually in the best interest of the community, because otherwise what will happen is there will be a lot of variants of this project floating around if they don't contribute the changes back into the system. So there are various licenses, and there is also the accessible commit process. What it means is it's an open, it's a transparent process. Anyone can contribute code, right? And it is peer reviewed and evaluated, right? And it's purely based on merit, and it has to be aligned with some of the strategic goals of the project, right? So it is a transparent commit process, and you have to earn the commit rights. No, I mean, you won't get the ability to commit code from day one. You have to build your reputation. Diverse ecosystem, right? You have people playing different roles. You have people working for different organizations. You have people working different time zones, right? For example, they may speak different languages, right? So one of the things that I focused when I started the Eclipse team back in 2008 is communication. Because I know all the developers are technically smart, right? But communication is key, and especially and a lot of people who work on open source, English is not their spoken language, right? So communication is essential because you need to know how to interpret, right? And the other part, and the most important part for you to be able to work in open source is be modest, right? I mean, keep the ego in your pocket, right? There are no titles, There is only one role, a developer, a contributor, right? And there's no hierarchy. It's purely based on merit. And that's the next point about participative meritocracy, right? So other committers have to vote for you to get commit rights, right? And they have to be convinced that you are ready to play the role of a committer. And what are the characteristics they look for? Technical expertise, for example, right? And process maturity, right? Following the ability to follow the process, right? Attention to details, small details, right? And most important, empathy towards the community. Once they become a committer, it's now their responsibility to give it back to the community, right? So they should be able to coach others in the community, handhold them, and help them become a committer. Open governance is extremely important from an enterprise point of view. What it means is that, so the governance is transparent. So there is a body, right? There is a governing body at different levels. It could be at the project level. It could be at the community level. It could be even at the foundation level. So Eclipse Foundation, which I'm associated with, it has governing bodies at the various levels. For example, the projects are led by PMCs, we call the project management committees, right? A set of projects, there will be, for example, a specific community. Think about IoT, the IoT community in Eclipse, right? So they have a working group, and it has its own governance body. And then the foundation itself has a governance body, which is the board of directors, which I'm part of. The companies like IBM has representatives on the board of directors. So open governance helps organizations to make sure that the open source projects are actually serving its purpose in the community and in the society. So these are the ways you can contribute to open source. You can contribute code, right? And you can fix bugs, for example. See, that's another interesting thing about open source. If there is something that really annoys you, go ahead and fix it and provide a patch or a pull request on GitHub, right? It's that easy. You don't have to go after someone and please fix. You don't have to do that. And it could be in any area, right? For example, I think it was sometime in 2015 when Cloud Foundry wanted to onboard Eclipse Foundation for their tools that actually integrates with Eclipse IDE, right? So we were left with a challenge to re-architect it in the user interface and the core, right? So that is something which I took up personally and did it, to splitting it up. Right? It's not hard, right? So you can contribute in any ways you want, right? It need not be something that you are actually working on as well. At that time, I was not working on that. I was working on something else. But this is something that interested me. And building community, that's again a responsibility as an open source contributor, right? It's not enough. Building community doesn't mean go and speak at conferences, which are required. You need to build collateral. You need to build tutorials. You need to build. You need to actually write blogs, right? So you need to be in the community. You need to engage in activity that enrich the community. So these are all the ways you can participate. And of course, consuming open source. There is no point in putting something in open if nobody is consuming it. So because it's the conception that actually makes it better. So innovation is actually the engine that drives you to the future. That's the way I put it, right? So it's extremely important, and you need diverse thought, diverse ideas. You need the ability to test your ideas quickly, and that is where open source come into play, right? So open source for a long time is known as the playground for innovation, and you can actually see it in action in a lot of new technologies that are coming up. So we are taking a look at another dimension of some of the innovation that IBM has done in the open source community, for example. Right? Bringing the enterprise capabilities into Linux, Eclipse I already talked about, driving forward the initiative for Cloud Native Foundation, that's very recent, and with Kubernetes as one of their first projects, right? And then you will see the container initiative, which is Docker, right? And the Open API, you heard about Swagger, for example. So IBM tried to make it open as an open API initiative. And there is Hyperledger. We will take a look at that in detail, what it's about. So Hyperledger is an open source project for blockchain that IBM started in 2016. So it was a research effort that started in 2014 in IBM Research Lab. As you know, blockchain was already there. It was being used for a specific purpose. Right? So in order to adopt it, in order to use it to solve the problems in our day-to-day life, there are a few things that need to be taken care of, right? Scalability, privacy, security, right? Robustness. Right? There are various factors that were important for enterprise to adopt it. So that is when the Hyperledger project, which is known as the blockchain for the enterprise, was born. Right? So IBM decided to work with the Linux Foundation in this case, right? And open sources. And there are various other partners, and there are startups who have already started using Hyperledger. How many of you heard about Hyperledger? It's pretty good. Here is another one. So I'm just taking some examples from the different foundations just to give you a feel of it. Here is one that IBM open sourced it at Apache. Right? It's called Apache OpenWhisk. Right? OpenWhisk is kind of unique in its programming model. I know you have heard about these concepts in different other ways. Essentially, it's about reacting to an event rather than you go and looking for the event again and again and again. Right? So that's the so there are these feeds and triggers, right? And then there are these rules which will redirect them to the right action. Right? So why is this important in this world, in this new world of cloud? As you know, in the cloud world, you pay for the capabilities that you use, right? You pay for compute, you pay for memory, right? So if you have an application that's sitting there, and for example, suppose you have an app that looks for severe weather conditions, for example, and in a place like Bangalore, that doesn't happen that often, right? But then what this app has to do is go and check whether it is there or not. And as you know, it's a total waste. It's a total waste of compute and network, right? So that is where this programming model helps you, the event-based programming model. Right? You don't have to poll for it, it'll come to you. Transformation. So I mentioned that innovation is the engine that drives you to the future, and it's your special characteristics for transformation that helps you survive and thrive once you get to the future, right? Because they go hand in hand. It's about your adaptability, your ability to react to the things around you and fine-tune your approach in order to bring the best experience for your clients. So here is an example of transformation as well as innovation as well. So Eclipse Foundation, the last couple of years has transformed itself. I already mentioned that it's not just about IT anymore. It's actually known as one of the most popular open source IoT efforts. I mentioned about Eclipse IoT, right? And there are a couple of innovations happening there, and it's actually it's actually the future of cloud native Java, as I like to put it, right? The evolution of cloud native Java is happening at Eclipse Foundation. About a year ago, Oracle, in consultation with the IBM and Red Hat, decided to give Java EE to Eclipse Foundation to take it forward. How many of you heard about Jakarta EE? Okay, so that's another objective of this talk, to make sure that you understand what Jakarta EE is. Jakarta EE is the next generation of Java EE. So once it came to Eclipse, right, Eclipse is taking it forward in the name Jakarta EE. So that's another innovation and transformation happening at Eclipse Foundation. Another effort that is happening that actually started even before Jakarta EE is the microprofile initiative, Eclipse. It is actually an open forum, right? The whole objective is to optimize enterprise Java for the microservices-based architecture. That's the objective. Just I think a couple of weeks ago, even Oracle has joined the microprofile family with their project called Helidon, right? So it's actually I mean there is a relationship between Jakarta EE and microprofile, right? But they are two independent efforts at this time, and sometime in the future there is actually a nice blog written about it in terms of the convergence of Jakarta EE and microprofile efforts. Right? So that's a great example. And here is another one, and my favorite as a old-time Java developer. How many of you heard about OpenJ9? Okay, so that 9 in there has absolutely no relationship to the Java version or Java 9, Java 10. Right? So please don't get confused. OpenJ9 is actually IBM's JVM, which IBM has been using for a long time for the products and runtime, right? IBM Web Server, etc. So last September, last year, 1 year ago, IBM open sourced it under the name Eclipse OpenJ9. And the best part of Eclipse OpenJ9 is it helps you improve performance by increasing the speed and reducing the memory. How is that possible? Because one of the things that we learned early on in computer science is if you want to increase speed, then it will be at the expense of more memory. And if you want to reduce memory, right, then that's at the expense of speed. It'll run slow. But here you have and that is why we are saying it's performance optimized for cloud workloads. For the same reason I talked about for in the case of OpenWhisk, right? Because you want to take less compute and you want to occupy less memory, right? That's compute, memory, network. All of these things are charged in the cloud environment. So these are extremely important. So how is that possible? That is where IBM's innovation coming into play. So for example, there is it's about packed classes, shared classes, right? Ahead of time compilation. So the point is, first time the startup will be slow, right? And then the subsequent startups will be very fast. There are a lot of blogs written about it, right? You can search for OpenJ9 performance and you will get a hit and read through those and understand your use case and see whether it's applicable for you. And it's available actually on Adopt OpenJDK. So here is another point. So there is, you know about OpenJDK, right? Which is something that Oracle initiated some time ago, right? And OpenJDK actually comes with a JVM in it called a hotspot JVM. So in another community called Adopt OpenJDK, adoptopenjdk.net, you will find OpenJDK builds with OpenJ9 and OpenJDK builds with Hotspot for a variety of platforms, right? So in IBM, we practice open source ourselves, right? So developer.ibm.com/open. We encourage our development teams to participate in open source by contributing their code to open source. So how do you decide which path to take? Should we just put it up in the open through developer.ibm.com/open, or should we propose it as a project under a foundation? Actually, it's an evolutionary process. You may start with doing the lightweight way, being an open project on IBM, right? And then graduate yourself to a project in open source, in one of the open source foundations. There are a lot of projects from IBM on GitHub, open to everyone, right? And the best part is there are a lot of code patterns as well, right? So the code patterns are starter code that actually uses some of the cloud services that we have, right? And the README file, you know that in GitHub, when you create a new repository and you add code, it will create your README file for you. In the README file, you will see a button like deploy to IBM Cloud. So all you have to do is click the button, and it will actually take the code, create your tool chain, right, which will have the Git repository and also a continuous delivery pipeline, and which is actually kicked off immediately after that, so that the code is deployed on IBM Cloud, and you can see the sample in action, right? So that's what it's about, the IBM code patterns. If you haven't heard about them, please take a look. That will actually get you started in using Watson APIs, in using the various other which are available on IBM Cloud. And as I said, the best part is that button, single click button, right? You will find it in most of them, not all of them yet, but we are working on that. So with a click, you also get a tool chain. That's another important part. You get a Git repository for yourself, right? And the delivery pipeline, right? You have everything for you to get started. So that's all I had. I can take any questions if you have. Sure? Yep, that's a great question. What incentives do we give to developers to contribute to open source? So let me answer that in a different way. So one of the things that I learned when I work with our high-performing developers is that one of the things that they look forward to is working with people better than them. They want to be surrounded by people better than them, right? So giving the ability to developers to work in open source actually solves that purpose. It serves that purpose, right? So it's more about being in the community, ability to create an identity for yourself, right? So for example, you are known within the community, not just your title in the company, right? So that is the biggest give back. And there will be awards and other aspects, right? But that's not the key thing, right? So it's about providing that flexibility, ability to define an identity for themselves and take the lead. And a lot of developers are really excited by it. But there are the other sets as well. That's what I said. 10 years back, I had a tough time finding people to work on open source, because one of the things I keep saying is working in open source is actually like working in a glass box. A lot of people don't want to do that. They don't like others looking at their code and giving them feedback, right? So, but some people are interested. So for such people, that is the benefit, the ability to work with people better than them, the ability to work with the community. Thanks. Sure. I hope you all got the question, right? Okay. It was a long one, so I'll summarize it. The question is there a risk in using open source for production systems, because the open source may not be there forever, right? To put it bluntly, right? There is, of course, a risk. What is the risk? Isn't there a risk that you are actually buying software from a vendor and that vendor goes out of business? Isn't there a risk? Isn't there a risk that that vendor gets bought over by another vendor, right? And this product is no longer in the market. So the risk is always there, right? And actually, I would say in open source, it's much less, because if you look at the parameters I mentioned about in open source, right, one of them is enterprise. If you actively, as an enterprise, if you actively participate in open source, then the risk of it going inactive is very less. Linux is a great example. Eclipse is another example, right? It's been going strong and getting stronger and stronger and evolving itself, right? Even today, we haven't missed a single release date for the Eclipse platform, right? And starting this year, we actually started releasing Eclipse, the Eclipse IDE, the Eclipse platform, every 3 months. It used to be released every year in June. Starting after this June release, we are doing it every 3 months. And it is made possible only by involvement from big enterprises. So that is, I mean, thanks for asking that question, because one of the things that we need is we need big enterprises also play their role in the open source ecosystem. So open source is not complete. So if you're dependent on open source where one of these factors are missing or weak that I explained, right, there could be a risk. But the risk is not greater than the risk you have with any vendor.
Large enterprise like IBM, how do your business folks look at your investments in the open source domain? Like what's in it for you? You have your entrenched long-term customers. Do you see revenues from them? Why are you doing these things?
Great question. So I will actually take another example, okay, instead of IBM. IBM I have a lot of examples. So I mentioned about Eclipse IoT, right, which is one of the most popular IoT frameworks out there. Just yesterday, I think, Bosch published an article about how much beneficial it is for them, and Bosch is actually the driving force behind it as well, right? So a lot of their clients actually wanted them to be in open source, so that they can build frameworks around it. They can build a community around it, right? So it is the power of community, essentially, and that applies to IBM as well. For example, IBM started Eclipse as an IDE, right? And Eclipse kind of evolved, the Eclipse IDE kind of evolved to become a platform, so that, because at that time I was in Rational when Eclipse just started out, then there was this, as you know, what is Rational famous for? UML, modeling. So we wanted to do modeling in Eclipse, right? We wanted to incorporate modeling. So then they kind of evolved into a platform, right? And then after 3.0 release, we said, okay, anybody who writes a Java application, why don't they use Eclipse? Then it becomes a rich client platform that you don't have to be an IDE itself, right? So it kind of evolves. So that way it's much beneficial for the organization. It is there, it is not direct, right? But it's a massive, it's a cascading effect. Do you think organizations, enterprises will still contribute? If not? So that's my question to you all as well. Do you see enterprises contributing to something if there isn't a longer term benefit? To the society as well, to the community as well, not just for them. Right? Because there is also the good Samaritan, there is also the good citizen approach as well. Yeah. You can't put a price to that. Okay, thank you very much.